Hey everyone, I thought that I would do a little bit of an update on where our rainbow trout have been moved to. Welcome to my basement. So a couple weeks ago I got a hold of Steve at Perusa's Pets and told him kind of the situation that we had going on with our aquaponics system and closing down the greenhouse. And I just asked if they had any used tanks that they had for sale. And recently he had received a 180-gallon used tank with a stand and a canopy. And then also I purchased a sump tank, which I'd never used a sump tank before. And so I plumbed it all in, and I've got everything going right now. We've probably got about 500 rainbow trout that we've kept for our system. And I figured putting it in my basement was the best place because then I didn't have to run a chiller all the time. I didn't have to worry about condensation on the outside of the fish tank as well. So everything's up and running. All of our salmon ended up being released into Fish Creek in Hubbardston, right below the spillway. So we released somewhere in the neighborhood of about 500 fish that were all between 3 and 5 inches along there. Some of those fish were Chinook salmon and some of those fish were coho salmon. So at this point, I would assume they are probably making their way back towards Lake Michigan. And maybe in the future, we'll have some statements from anglers about some of those fish being caught in that area. So I'm just going to kind of go through and show specifically the way that this tank operates, and I would love some feedback from students if you have it. I also did run an FX4 filter that's hooked into an Arctica chiller. More or less, that's just to maintain the temperature that you see there, running right now at 66.3 degrees. My basement's temperature regularly sits somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees, so that chiller doesn't run very much. So here is our sump tank. It's an eShops sump tank. We're running a pump. All the water is supplied to the tank through the pump. You can see where I've plumbed it up into the tank, and there's just simply stand pipes running up into the tank. The drains are here. Water flows down into the back of the sump tank. We're running some carbon inside of the filter as well to help try to minimize odor. We have had a couple of salmon that ended up getting into the overflows. So this over here is the overflow. You can see it in here as well. Maybe it's better to go this way. So when I was plumbing stuff in, I had already put the fish in the tank and gotten some water in here and leveled everything up. And a couple of fish got behind our overflow, so some of them have made it into the sump tank. Running a skimmer filter in the back as well, just for aeration. And then also a couple of automatic feeders so that I don't have to constantly feed fish. They seem pretty happy. Seem to be doing pretty good. We also have a sponge filter running in there as well, again to do a little bit of filtration, but the big thing there is I really initially upon putting fish in here noticed that they had a lot of operculum movement, almost seemed as if they weren't getting enough oxygen, so putting the skimmer filter in there and putting the sponge filter in there will definitely help with getting more and more oxygen to these guys as they grow. So the plan is in the fall when we return to school, we'll take them, transport them back to our aquaponics system, and by the end of the year next year we should have quite a few fish in the 12 to 14 inch range.